You might find it hard to believe, but I'm actually English. It's worrying when the people who are our hosts speak better English than the English people. But I've actually learned over the years that I'm doing my best. I'm from North East England, we speak very quick. So I'm going to try and speak relatively slowly, but also keeping an eye on the clock because we've got a lot to get in. So, as Eva mentioned, I've been doing this for quite a while. My role really that I think of now in the UK is change management. So I'm trying to get people to think about changing practice. We've been doing the same thing the same way for so long. And with some success, although because I'm an audiologist myself, I know how resistant we are to change. And the only way people do change is if it's made easy. If it's easy, there's a good chance you'll do it. If it ain't easy, there's a good chance you won't. So that's not what I'm going to talk about, by the way. I just thought I'd tell you that. What I am going to talk about is something which is very much state of the art at the moment, and that's about audiology and cognition. I really enjoyed Lisa's talk. I thought it was fantastic. We'd had no communication beforehand, so I hadn't seen hers, she hadn't seen mine. Fortunately, there's a lot of similarity, so we're not arguing about things, so that should be okay. Audiology, cognition, joining the dots, huge amounts of research going on. Is it time for us now to start to take a little bit more notice to this and to move on from just fitting hearing aids? Who knows this man? Oh, fantastic, how do you do that? Do it again. I did really notice. Anyway, 1967, Mr. Spock.
Live long and prosper.
Said that. Live long and prosper. Very famous. Now, the thing was, in 1967, people didn't live long and prosper. It wasn't that long ago. But we're all living longer now. And I think really what we need to do is just to give you a few little examples of this. So we see here, this is from the World Bank. You probably can't see the numbers, but in 1960, 5% of the world population were over 65, 1960. By the time we got to 2015, that was 8.5% of the world population. Now that's quite a few more. So we're living longer, which is not a bad thing in general. So if we're living longer, then it's likely that things will wear out a bit, and I speak from personal experience. Okay, so as you get older, things wear out. But we're not just looking at the 65-year-olds, we're also looking, oh sorry, that's supposed to do something. All right. Anyway, so basically what it was saying was that the actual number of people expected to live up to exceed 65 is going to grow exponentially over the next few years. And these are people who are of great interest to us. Over 85, this is US figures, 6 million in 2009. That's expected to reach, in the next 20 years, 10 million. This is over 85. Okay, so we're all living longer, and I blame you for your diets. If you just stuck with the English diet, fried food, bacon and eggs for breakfast, then we'd all be dying at the proper time. So, live long and prosper. Our clients, our old clients, are no longer old in their minds. They now feel that they're younger, they now act younger, they now are willing to expend money and effort in staying younger. And we've got to take this into account. When I was young, my parents were old even when they weren't old. So my parents, when they were 30 or 40, seemed to me to be really old. But that's all changing, and expectations are changing. And because this is a new way of living in later life, then we've got to adjust. We can't do things the same way that we've always done them. So, what we're going to look at here, I'll just make sure I've got the right thing, is something that might be familiar to you. And I apologise for the lack of bone conduction and masking and all those things, but just for ease of clarity. What sort of hearing loss might that associate with that? What sort of client might have a hearing loss like that? It's not a trick question. Okay, so it's typical presbycusis. It's an age-related hearing loss. Is that a young brain? Is that an old brain? Do we know what sort of brain that is? Have we any idea what sort of brain that is? So we focus on this bit, the hearing, because that's what we learn in school. in audiology school, we focus on the hearing. As Lisa was saying, this is very much what we do. But the problem is, it's not enough. It's not enough for what our future hires are going to expect. We need to think about a bit more than hearing. In fact, Douglas Beck, in 1999, made a statement and actually had a paper in 1999 called Audition Matters More as Cognition Declines, and Cognition Matters More as Audition Declines. Does that make sense to everyone? So as your hearing gets worse, then you need a bit more up top, and if your up top gets worse, you need a bit more in there. Okay, so it's one of those things where it's not quite as simple as that, but this was from 1999, so we've known about this for a long time. This is not new. But it's something that really, there's been huge amounts of research done in recent times, and we're really on the cusp of a big change in our profession. So this is a bit we like. We're familiar with this. Ears, it's what we do. And as audiologists, what we do with ears is hopefully fix them, because we're basically fixers. That's what we do, that's what we learn. Somebody says to you, what do you do with that? It's sort of, ooh, it's a little bit outside of my depth. Now, I've had an experience of working with people who have been going on the tinnitus journey. They've never done tinnitus sort of therapy before or anything like that. It was introduced with WiredX probably around 5-6 years ago. A lot of audiologists went, not for me, don't know anything about it, wouldn't feel confident, haven't got a clue, okay? Which was fine. But when we actually started to talk to people and show people how simple it was to provide an element of tinnitus treatment, a lot of people adopted it and said, oh, okay, I can do that. And I think it's this fear of not actually knowing. We don't want to get too involved with this because we're not comfortable with it. But we really don't have any choice, because this is a huge part of our clients, our future patients' ability to communicate and to stay in touch with the world. So we can't ignore it. In the UK, there's a magazine called The Lancet, it's a GP's magazine. Last summer, they did an article entitled Dementia Prevention, Intervention and Care. It's very interesting if you'd like a copy, it's 65 pages. I'm an audiologist, I'm not a researcher, so like most audiologists, I just go to the summary at the end to start with and say, oh, that'll do, I don't need to know anything more. But this one, there was a bit more in it. And so this was in last summer that this was announced, and interestingly, the media took an immediate interest in it. Now, you're not able to see this diagram very well, so I'm just going to try and expand it. The reason it's very interesting for us is because that green bit there, I don't know how the light works on here, but I'll try and press it. Okay, the green bit there. This is midlife, so this is basically things that we can do to try and reduce the effect of cognitive decline. And the one in midlife, which was top of the tree, it wasn't blood pressure, it wasn't obesity, what was it? Hearing loss. So 9% was the biggest risk factor in late midlife for people to go on to develop cognitive problems, and ultimately dementia. Would you have expected that? I certainly didn't. I thought, oh, this looks a bit interesting. 9%. And this is something we can do something about. This is a treatable condition. So all of a sudden we had a link. We had people think, oh, you'll always see headlines in the, I don't, you might not have papers like this over here, but in the UK they say things like, get hearing aids or you die. Well, maybe it's not quite as nice. But you know, there are things where people sort of, they sort of oversell the whole thing. But this was in The Guardian the day after this was released. Hearing loss could pose greater risk of potential dementia in later life study. So, you know, it's something that's got people thinking. If you think there's a stigma attached to hearing loss, and people go, oh, I don't want to show that, there's an even bigger stigma attached to cognitive decline, because people don't want to be seen to be lacking a bit. So we know this is something that we really need to address, and address sooner rather than later. So, is this an opportunity? Is this something that, as audiologists and hearing care professionals, that we should be saying, we are the people to be involved with this, because we are seeing these clients, these patients. We are the ones that they come to see. This is very big for me, because I know, like I said in the introduction, that if you give somebody something that's too difficult, they just won't do it. All right? So there'll be a few people, hopefully a lot of people, who will take this as an opportunity and say, right, I need to do this, I need to introduce some sort of change to my practice to be able to accommodate all this new knowledge. or would you just stick your head in the sand and say, stop talking? And the problem is, if you do that, you won't be here in 10 years' time in business. So people do need to be very careful about choosing to do the right thing. So I thought we could ask some questions today. I haven't got all the answers, but I'll give you some answers. So, what is mild cognitive impairment? Sorry, I'm not going to. What's the answer? Just as well with it. What is mild cognitive impairment? It's alright, don't worry, it's just a joke. So, what is mild cognitive impairment? How can we screen for mild cognitive impairment? Should we be screening for mild cognitive impairment? How can we avoid worrying patients? It's a big question. Oh, you know, they've come to have the hearing check. If you start saying, well, while I sit here, we'll just check your brain out, they might say, well, hang on a minute, this is not what I signed up to today. So you have to be fairly careful about it. How can we use the information on our patient's cognitive ability to help develop a treatment plan? Very important. Because if we don't know, what you do, you guess. You know, most of what we do is guesswork, to be honest. You know, let's not kid everyone. If the fitting software from the manufacturer sort of fits the hearing aid, and you don't do anything but a pure tone audiogram, then you just guess. So, how can we optimize hearing instrument fittings to maximize benefit and satisfaction? So what this means is there are a lot of hearing aid features, not just in the future, which we've already heard about today, which sounds brilliant, but they're there already that we can use to best fit our customers who have a degree of cognitive impairment and a degree of hearing loss. And a lot of us don't think about it. And how can we differentiate ourselves from our competitors? Might be different in your country, but certainly in the UK, everyone is always looking for something to make them that bit different from everyone else. And you can't just say, we offer the best service, because everybody offers the best service. So you do have to have something that's going to give you a little bit of a differentiator. Interesting? Want to know more? Okay. So what is cognition? Wow. It involves this little thing here. It's great animation. It took me ages to find out, but it's just really, really cool. And I didn't actually know if it was going to work because I hadn't seen the slides working on it. Mostly when I do something, it never works. So the fact that that brain is actually rotating there is interesting. Anyway, what is cognition? Well, it's basically a group of mental abilities. That's the way to think of it. It's a group of mental abilities, thinking processes, including memory, reasoning, attention, all for the purpose of acquiring knowledge and interacting with the environment. And that changed on its own now, which I thought was very clever and unexpected. So the thing is, cognitive ability, our ability to do all these things, is finite. It's not unlimited. And if you think about if you join a gym, which I know you all do, of course, because it's January and everybody joins the gym in January, and you start doing some weightlifting, and you start with a little 1 kilogram, and you go, yeah, it's all right. And 2 kilogram, well, that's not bad. Best of 3 minutes, starting that I give up. It's too much effort. So that's physical effort, and we all have limits on physical effort. However, if anybody in the room has a personal trainer, or can afford a personal trainer, not that I have, of course, you will find that your physical effort is actually greater than you think because you've got someone coaching you and getting you to use that bit more. That will be more relevant later on. But this is finite. Cognitive ability is finite. And once you reach the limits of your cognitive ability, then you're in trouble because it becomes very, very stressful, very tiring, and this is when Lisa was talking about listening effort. So when things become more effortful, then the chances of it working are much reduced. That's the bad news. Okay. So as you get older, the cognitive ability gets less. I have personal experience. I went to the fridge the other morning to get my milk to put on my cornflakes, an English breakfast cereal, or maybe you have it here as well. And I thought I wanted to do something instead. What happened there? It was actually quite nice. I did enjoy it. And I told my wife I meant to do that. And she just went. So that's the programming failure. Now, the only reason I can think of that must have happened is because I'm a man and I can only do one thing at a time, and I must have been thinking of something else. That must have been the answer. But you know, these little things do sneak up on you, so you do have to watch out for it. Another thing which is quite interesting, I don't know, again, I don't want to get too man, lady, and all that sort of thing, but I'm a man, and if I go into a new city, and my sat navigation is taking me somewhere, If I'm trying to find a parking place, I have to turn the radio off because I can't possibly find a parking place with music playing in the background. Is anybody else do that? Mostly men. Yeah. Definitely. And the thing is, of course, being a man, you can't possibly think about asking for directions, can you? Because you've got the map in your head. My wife says, how do you know where you're going? I said, because I've got the map in my head. Might be of the wrong town, that's when it all goes a little bit messy. But anyway, cognitive ability generally declines as you get older. However, there's no standard level. If you look at some of the papers, it will say that over the age of 65, then the extent of mild cognitive impairment, which is where it's a bit of a nuisance, but it doesn't really impact on your life, is between 5 and 40% in over 65, and that's quite a broad amount, 5 to 40%. So, we need to really get more information on how many people. We can't just accept that as being the level that we're going to be working at. Who likes triangles? Anybody do wide-extent therapy? I like the triangle from wide-extent. This is a slightly different one because it has nothing to do with tinnitus. It does fit with what Lisa mentioned a bit earlier on. So, at the bottom of our triangle, we have hearing. Now, actually hearing sound, is pretty much a passive experience. You don't really have to think about it. Imagine if you had to think about every sound that you heard. You'd soon be in trouble, wouldn't you? You wouldn't last 5 minutes. So hearing, actually detection of sound, is a passive experience. And because it's a passive experience, it requires very little cognitive ability. So, when you sit someone in the sound booth, play the pure tones and audiometer, which have absolutely nothing to do with their daily life, by the way, they're in a quiet room with no distractions, having to do one task. So even if they have significant cognitive ability, they'll be able to do it, because all they've got to do is the one thing. So just using an audiogram is not enough to do what we need to do to get the best from hearing aids. So that's a passive function. You'd be surprised to hear that listening is actually a little bit more difficult. Because with listening, you have to pay attention. Another thing that I get accused of not doing quite regularly. Attention shows intent, so this is where we see here. So intention is to do something. So you've moved on if you've actually heard the sound, but the next stage is to actually listen, actually focus, actually pay attention to that sound. It's starting to get a bit harder now, because if you're expecting to understand it, you've still got to do these first two, but understanding requires you to go into your long-term lexical memory and look at all these different things and say, well, how does this all work? Does this make sense? Do I need to do anything? And this happens almost instantaneously. You have to have meaning, so does it actually mean anything? I've got that intention again. And then at the top of the tree, we have communication, which is what we're really doing. What we're really trying to treat our customers, our patients for, is to communicate better, to stay connected. And it's communication. So we're not fitting hearing, we're not fitting people with hearing loss. We're fitting people with communication problems. And once you're in communication, then there's an exchange. So it involves more than one person. You don't normally communicate with yourself. That's something. But, it's better to have someone else involved if you want to communicate. And would you be surprised to hear that as you go up that triangle, the loading becomes higher? So at the very bottom end, just hearing requires very little cognitive effort. Once you're communicating, you have to employ a lot of things in there. And there's some great research talking about things like fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence, way out of what we can talk about this afternoon. But it's well worth reading, and we will give you access to some of these papers if you're interested afterwards. But this is the way that it works. And it's quite a good way of thinking about it, because if there's any problems, if you can't hear, then the rest ain't going to work. If you're not listening, then you can't communicate. If you can't understand it, so everything has to come in sequence. That was good. Didn't expect that to happen. Sometimes things just work. So, multitasking isn't real. Did you know that? Not even you ladies can multitask. You say you can, but you can't. Because your brain doesn't do things in parallel, it does things in sequence. So you can do more than one thing at once, but you have to move your cognitive engine from one thing to the other, back and forward. And that's what you ladies can do that we can't do. You can switch very quickly. You can be ironing and watching the TV and feeding the baby, and all of those things at the same time. Whereas I struggle to do one thing sometimes, but I can do one thing at a time. And it means that our brain and our filtering mechanism becomes very, very effective. So if you're sitting reading a paper or reading a book, whatever, and your wife or your partner comes into the room and speaks to you, depending on how into the book you are, there's a very good chance that you won't respond, even though you've heard that person come into the room. So that gives you that trigger at the bottom end, so it's bottom book processing, to actually say, right, I need to switch attention here, otherwise I'm going to be in big trouble. Right? So this all happens. Now, if you've got a hearing problem, significant hearing problem, then that is going to cause some difficulties because you missed that first bit. Similarly, if you've got a cognitive problem and you're processing things slowly, maybe it's got less capacity to work with, that can also give you difficulty. If you have both, and very often you will have both, then you really are in trouble. Does this look familiar to anyone? She doesn't look very happy, does she? Really, to be fair. I see this all the time. Every time you go to a restaurant, to a bar, wherever you go, there's always someone on their mobile phone in the corner saying, I wish you just put that thing down. Having said that, nowadays, you've usually both got completely ignoring each other. However, this is what I mean where people are distracted. Now, if there's distractions, you have to apply cognitive effort to actually take the distractions into account. And the more distractions there are, the harder it is to actually hear and to listen and to understand. So that's not good. I've just been to Spain on holiday. I'm being English, I speak nothing but poor English. I have no idea. You could say anything to me in Japanese or Swahili, I wouldn't have a clue. What I found, this was anecdotal really, but when I was researching this, was that if I've got relatively normal hearing despite my advancing yet. I've got a slight dip in that side from the drum I've been hitting the cymbal when I was in the band. But anyway, so I've got relatively normal hearing audiologically, but I do struggle in background noise. But I struggle more in background noise when it's English background noise. Does that make sense? Because what's happening is I'm in a conversation, everybody else in the bar or the restaurant is all talking, they're all talking English. And my ears are, I heard that word, I heard that word. So that's causing me problems. I went to a very busy restaurant in Spain, everybody's speaking Spanish. Heard my wife perfect. I didn't even think about it. I thought, so what's going on there? So I had to research that and see if it was true, and it is true. It is true. So in a noisy situation, if you're using resources to sort of listen to these distractions, then you have more time. So if you want to get the best results from your hearing aid fittings, send your patients to a foreign country. So if you want to hear better noise, go abroad. Don't pay for it, of course. So we are good at filtering them. So most people can't do this. Even I can do this. Sit and read a book. Not normally one of those analog books. I use one of these digital things. Analog, so passé. But analog books are good. And it's amazing how people can actually do this and be unaware of things that are going on around them. And you volunteer. There is no pain involved. Maybe slight pain. No, there's no pain involved. Now, this volunteer is going to help me very quickly. It's not embarrassing, there's nothing difficult about it, but you do have to speak English, which is everybody in the room. So anyone can volunteer. It takes 30 seconds, and if you don't volunteer, I'll pick someone. Anybody like to have a shot? Get someone. Come on in. Hey, volunteer! All you've got to do is stand right there at the bottom of the stairs and look at the screen. Don't get too close. Perfect. Now, something's going to appear on the screen, and I need you to say out loud exactly what you see. Just read it. Don't think about it.
If you can read this, you must be really smart. According to a researcher at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letters be at the right place. The rest can be a total mess and you can still read it without problem.
Well, hey! Great! Thanks. Now, if I had said to you, can you read that? You probably haven't got a clue. Well, I bet everyone could read that. That makes it a little bit easier for those who can't. But you know, this is incredible. I know this is visual, but you have to remember that communication isn't just auditory, is it? Another example, if you go to a restaurant, and I'm trying to get a file, I didn't have time to finish this, but imagine you're in a restaurant, you can't see, and the waiter speaks to you in Japanese, saying, would you like your wine glass filled up? Well, if you don't speak Japanese, you wouldn't have a clue, would you? Just yell, sorry, Japanese. You wouldn't have a clue. However, if you saw him standing with the bottle, leaning over your glass, going, oh yeah, sure, you know. So we don't include this in our assessments, do we? How many people include sort of visual in the assessments? It's because we haven't got the tools, we haven't got the materials. So when we're testing speech and noise, it's not really a valid test, because normally when you're conversing with someone in a noise restaurant, you can see the face. What's all that about? So we do need to move forward with a few of these things, I think. Okay. This would be good, wouldn't it? I'd love one of these. I'd actually like a USB-C, which is the much slimmer one now, because I think that would look a bit better in that position on my head. But, you know, if we had the facility to plug a USB drive into our brains, we have selected USB drives for work, sport, music, brilliant, you know. So I got the sport one on. No, you can't ask that question, you know, I've got the wrong drive. We're probably not that far away. That was new to me, that Lisa was talking about this afternoon, about the EEG, electrodes, that was incredible, wasn't it? That's pretty close to that, I think. Probably not that far away. Any questions so far? So, is this enough? Is this enough to be able to successfully fit modern hearing technology and gain satisfied customers who will go and shout from the rooftops, you're the best thing since sliced bread and you should have done it years ago? From what you know now, is it enough? Probably isn't. Probably isn't, because if this is all you do, remember that Puritan audiogram has been around for a century, more than a century, and it's inherent with error. Because, you know, we've got a plus of 5 dB, the audiometer only works within plus of 5 decibels, so we've got a potential 10 decibel error to start with. And then if you do really measurements and try and fit the target within 1 dB, what was the point? Makes no sense. So we need to challenge a lot of these things here. Is that enough? Probably not. Yes, I don't know about audio countries, but in the UK, a lot of people, this is all they do. Obviously, they talk to the customers as well. They don't just do an audiogram and say, oh, you hear it. Well, some do. But you know, so people do communicate. But in terms of actual assessment, this is all we do. So what about if we do this? That'd be great, wouldn't it? Apart from the fact that I've just told you it wouldn't be that great because there's no visual clues. But is that enough? Well, how about I said to you, you could have two people with identical quick sin scores, identical audiograms, but one of them was a very successful user of hearing aids and one wasn't. And you'd wonder why. Well, why is that? The reason why is because one person has had to put a lot of effort in to do this test. They've got no visual information, they've only got the words, so they're using a lot of cognitive effort to actually do the test. The other person maybe doesn't use as much effort, so you get exactly the same score, but someone is really stressed by it and someone isn't, and you don't know why, except we do that. So we know that this cognition thing is something which sort of explains when we have problems with thinking, to an extent. It's not quite that simple. So we're all different. If everybody's different, does anybody put your hand up if you're average, by the way? No, I don't think there's any average people in the room. Because nobody's really average, the fact that everything we do is based on averages is maybe a little bit suspect. You know, because unless that person happens to be Mr. or Mrs. Average, then whatever we do, if we don't look at them as individual, is going to be, at best, a starting point. It's not going to be a solution. So what is this mild cognitive impairment that we're all going to get? Well, it's classed as a condition which someone has minor problems with recognition, like me with orange juice, heading on a slippery slope, the mental abilities such as memory or thinking. And it's very prevalent. Now, like I said before, it's a big scale, but you know, we're looking at between, say on average, between 30% of over 65s will have a degree of mild cognitive impairment. This doesn't necessarily mean that they will go on to get dementia, which is the thing where people go, oh, I don't want that, that doesn't sound good. However, the latest information, and it's probably a bit out of date now, 20 years old, is there's approximately 80% of people who are diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment will go on to develop dementia within 6 years. Okay? But there are things you can do to slow this down, and I think that's something that we really need to think about. So has anybody got one of these? If you haven't, I would recommend it. Mine doesn't work very well, unfortunately. But you know, when we're talking about where we are now, where we want to be in the future, what we're going to do to improve our practices, at best, we guess. We sort of say, well, I think probably this go. Some of the information that Lisa's talked about was brilliant. I think it's fantastic that there's more than one manufacturer working together on these things. It's just a really, really, for me, very, very encouraging that we're all going in the same direction. So, cognitive screening and audiology. Oh no, not that. This is not what I do. I hear you all saying, don't worry. It's actually very simple. Thorny topic of cognitive screening. Now, why shouldn't it be a thorny topic? Let me just ask, and I don't expect you all to put your hands up, but for those of you who are not from the UK, who've gone through your training in Denmark, whatever, how much time was spent on cognition things during your audiology training? A lot? Very little? Anyone? Much? Any? Tiny bit? No, zero, exactly. Same as this. If this is so important, and we now know that it is, the people who devise these courses and train our audiologists of tomorrow have got to start including this in the training. It's no good them coming into practice knowing nothing about it. So we need to start putting pressure on people. And those more mature audiologists can't just close the door and say, I'm not interested. You've got to learn about it. You have to learn something new every day. That's your task when you leave here today, is learn something new every day. So preventative strategies, what you can do to reduce cognitive impairment are in the top there. So increase the brain reserve, cognitive reserve, is preserved hearing, education and cognitive training. Now cognitive training is a little bit of an interesting one. Does anybody do these brain training things? Lou wants to do it, it's called this one, yeah? And things like Sudoku, and you know, you see everybody with that analog books doing Sudoku on the plane. It doesn't work, sorry. But it's bad news. The latest evidence that it doesn't really work. It can keep you very active and things, but in terms of preserving your cognitive ability, it doesn't really work. However, I've got a belief, and it's a personal opinion, I don't have any research to back this up, is when we look at auditory training, so people who are actually using some of this and actually using it to understand speech and use it in combination with the hearing aids and everything else, things like LACE and other ones are available, potentially could help. And I think that's the difference, because what we're doing is using isolation. I don't think a cognitive training program would work, but if you combine, and this is what we need to do, we need to combine thinking about hearing, thinking about communication, thinking about aging, thinking about cognition. But that's where we come in, preserved hearing. And that's what we need to find. We need to find the golden piece in the puzzle. This is the challenge that we need to do. Because once we've got that golden piece and we are comfortable, that's very important, because as professionals, if we're not comfortable and confident in doing something, then we don't do it. Because you will feel awkward for your customers and go, oh, she hasn't got a clue what she's doing. So you have to get to that point. And it's not hard. Where is it? Pretty good, eh? Yeah. So in the UK, a lot of people now start doing magazine treatment. Is that common in other countries as well or not? No. Okay. Well, you couldn't do it in the UK until about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when the governing body changed and they suddenly said, You haven't been allowed to do wax treatment, but seeing you spend all your day looking in people's ears, perhaps you are the best people to be doing it. So they were allowed to do it. People who have adopted this, who do it properly, Vincent is one of them. Is this the worst thing you've ever done? Is it one of the best things you've ever done? So adopting new things doesn't have to be difficult. You have to do it right, and you have to be confident, and you will gain from it. Now, we're going to go back to the topic of pro-mic measurements, real ear measurements. Don't be embarrassed. Who uses these regularly? Anyone? Pretty good. That's a good turnout, better than we normally get in the UK. Pro microphone I started doing in 1980 when it first came along with the Rastronics CCI10, if anyone remembers that. Very good. The problem I had with pro mics at that time was it was all to do with fitting to target. Whose target was right? Who was to say this target was better than this target? And also bearing in mind that we've got a 10 decibel variance potentially on our pure tone audiogram while trying to fit within 3 dB. This makes no sense. Then speech mapping, live speech mapping came along. People really didn't understand that there was a difference, but it suddenly became very much more usable because what you could do now is visualize. And for me, as a tool to help my customer to understand the hearing loss, it made so much sense because apart from anything else, when you use live speech mapping, it's all SPL, so the graphs are the right way. So instead of down being louder and up being quieter, which is bonkers, by the way, you certainly get rid of the pure tone audiogram at some point. So it is much easier to explain. And this is great. There is a problem with it though, because it also works on deaf people, which you probably know. Anybody surprised it works on deaf people? I haven't actually tried it, but if you do a real ear measurement on a deaf person, you do get good results very often. It doesn't really explain how well we can communicate. So really what it does do is it gives us information that our hearing instrument is providing the right level of sound to enable us to hear right at the bottom of the triangle. Okay, so we're getting enough. If we haven't got that, then we might as well give up, because if we can't hear it, nothing else works. So I'm not knocking this at all. I think this is brilliant. We should be doing it, but we need to understand where it fits into our whole process. So, if we're looking at the potential of using some sort of screening, there are some prerequisites that we need to think about. This is the biggest one. As with tinnitus, we all have limitations. And you don't want to work outside of your limitations, otherwise you'll end up in a big mess. So, to work with cognitive screening, as hearing care professionals, you are well within your scope of practice to actually administer cognitive screening. What you're not within scope of practice is to diagnose. All right, so diagnosis is somebody else. This is screening. This is all you do is a screening test. So you need to have communication. You need to have a psychologist, a memory clinic. You need to have someone so that if there is people are failing, which they will do, the screening test, you can say, right, we just need to have this looked at to see if we can help with things. But you need to word it so it's all related to communication. And I'll go into this in a few moments. But you must do this. So without a referral partnership with anyone, don't even think about it. Okay, it'll be a mess. You need to have a protocol, because if you haven't got a protocol, how's it going to work? You need to know that when this person comes in, once I've done this, then the next step is whatever. And again, with the best will in the world, a lot of audiologists' protocols are all in the head. There's nothing written down. It's actually quite good to have a protocol written down, particularly if you're in a multi-audiologist practice. Now, you need to have a rehabilitation plan, because you will apply a different rehabilitation plan for someone who has cognitive impairment to someone who doesn't show cognitive impairment. Now, why would that be? Has anybody actually sat for 45 minutes showing the patient how to put the batteries in, how to adjust the volume control, how to clean the hearing aids, how to do all these bits, and then they come back a week later and say, you didn't show me that. So you're spending all that time, and that person's working memory, which is obviously under load at that point, short-term memory, just wasn't out of it. So there's no point. So if someone is showing difficulties with memory, it's got to be printed. They've got to take things away. You have to have that information. Don't waste your time. So so you have to. If you don't know, then you can't do it. You have to have a good understanding of technology features. Now, I'm not going to dwell on this at this point, but there are some features that are in hearing aids now which are really advantageous to people who have reduced cognitive ability. Things like slow-acting compression. We've known this for a long time. People with limited cognitive ability do benefit from slow-acting compression. And it really is just because we're reducing the distraction, because it's the distractions that are putting the load onto the cognitive system, which creates the effortful listening. And what about noise reduction? Now we know that noise reduction really has very little effect on objective testing, signal noise ratio, speech noise ratio. So if you do a quick sync test with and without noise reduction, the chance of it making any difference is pretty much minimal. So because of that, and we understand that noise reduction is not for that purpose, a lot of us don't use noise reduction. Yet, if you use noise reduction in areas where you possibly wouldn't normally, when someone shows cognitive impairment, again, because you're limiting a lot of that distraction and other noises, then less likely to struggle and more likely to succeed. So there's a few little hints and tips that we should consider trying that are just a little bit out, a little bit left field of what we would normally do as hearing professionals. Lisa mentioned about about directional microphones. Now, directional microphones, we've been told that directional microphones are for when you want to listen from someone in front and not from the back. Directional microphones actually work really well all of the time, well, most of the time, for people who've got cognitive impairment. Same thing, you're just reducing the load. So, if you are going to introduce this into practice, timing is important. So, all you've got to do is during your history taking is ask one question. Do you feel your memory is as good as it used to be? Now, bear in mind, we're talking about this for people who are potentially over 65. This isn't for everybody who comes into practice. But just ask the question. Do you feel it? And if someone says, oh, funny you should mention that, but I have been struggling a little bit recently. So immediately you know that there's something to go on. But that's an inoffensive question, you know. And the thing is, you can add to it by spending some time just to explain about the links between our hearing system and our brain. We know so much more about it now. So during our assessment today, we're going to look at both of these things for you because we need to look at both of them to get the best results for you. So part of your assessment today will include a short memory screening test. As you know, the brain and memory are actively involved in this. You don't have to use these words, but this is just a general idea. Now, I don't know about in your countries, but this is done a lot GP practice. Once people get to a certain age, they're screening for all sorts of nasty things, and cognitive function is one of them. But the GP screening process is not necessarily fit for purpose, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes in the UK. But you know, people have had this, they have had some sort of cognitive screening a lot of times. But when you do this, now, the thing is, what we have to remember is that doing a cognitive screening test is a verbal test. You're actually asking someone questions. Now, can anyone see that that might be a problem if people have a hearing loss? So I would suggest that you don't do it at the start because you need to know if there's a hearing loss. And if there is a hearing loss, you need to compensate for that using a personal listening device, talking louder, whatever you do. But you do need to take it into account because you can't ask someone questions to do a cognitive test and basically they didn't hear you, which is why this talks about it. So, I would say there. Okay, so a routine, very sort of simple thing. History taking, otoscopy, hearing assessment, whatever that may be, out of the book, out of the booth, cognitive screening. So what makes an ideal screening test? Well, it's got to be easy. I've said that before, I'll say it again. If it isn't easy, you won't do it. I know you won't. It's got to be cost effective. If it's going to cost you a lot of money, then you need to look at the cost-benefit ratio and decide if it's something that you want to put into your practice. So that has to figure. It's got to require minimal training. Okay, so if you've got to go to school for a month to learn how to do this, then you're probably not going to be able to do it. So that's also important. It's got to be time efficient. How many times do people say, oh, I haven't got time, I'm so busy, I haven't got time, I couldn't possibly do speech time, oh no, I haven't got time. Well, I couldn't possibly do pro mind, I haven't got time. All you do is know what you're doing for the rest of the time. You know, so I mean, I think time efficient is important. If it takes a long time, it's hard. It's not hard. It's a load for you and it's a load for your clients and patients. So it has to be time. And why are we doing this? This is the reason why we're doing this. Because we want people to be happier. We want people to be more successful. We want people to actually benefit from coming and seeing a specialist. Remember, hearing aids help you hear. And do some of this stuff as well, to be fair. Some good ones do a bit of stuff as well. But you know, we can't do all the things that are attached to it. So really it's an opportunity for our profession to really say, you know, we are the people who can help you get the best from technology and from what you have. Well, you don't say what you have remaining because that would probably worry someone. You know, but making the most of what you've got, especially what it's. So that's great. It's got to be easy to score. If it's complicated, if you've got to have a spreadsheet and you know multiple applications open to score, you won't do it because it's not easy. It's got to be reliable. So you know you have to make sure that whatever you do is going to be repeatable. It's got to be sensitive and specific. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of the screening tests are very much for dementia. They're actually really to show dementia on the subject of which the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, which is the one adopted in the US, was recently delivered to President Trump, I believe, and he passed. You know, so, you know, what I'm saying is that you have to have stuff that is going to be sensitive to mild cognitive impairment. Pick the right tool. And what this means is it has to correlate with everything else. So basically, everything's got to be in agreement. Have positive predictive value. What that means is that you've got to make sure that if someone fails the screening test, that they have it's true. Right? You don't want people failing if they've got perfect cognitive ability, so it's got to be very good from that point of view. And they're not all the same. Right? So you do have to be a bit selective. Some are very, very lengthy, like everything else. You can go on and on and on. Anybody recognise this little chap? He's not really that little, but I'm sure you won't mind me saying so. Robert Sweetell, Mr. Tinnitus from the US, wrote this paper in 2015. It's actually an American journal. And it was inspirational for me. I thought, this is it. This is what we should be doing. Anybody who's got it? Not really. So this is what I mean when we need to encourage people. And he was looking at the same thing that I'm going to introduce you today, which is called the 6CIT test, standing for the Cognitive Impairment Test. And the 6 there is significant. Anybody guess what the 6 might mean? Come on, it's not the end of the day yet. 6 questions. 6. Right. So there's 13 in the mocker, the President Trump one, there's only 6 here. Critically balanced and validated. It's sensitive for mild cognitive impairment. That's the important bit. Okay? It's not for dementia, it's not dementia screen. It's sensitive for cognitive impairment. There are only 6 questions. That doesn't take long, does it? 3 to 5 minutes. Can everyone afford to put 3 to 5 minutes into their assessment so the result of better outcomes? I think so. So very, very quick. And it's easy to score. Guess what? It's free. Doesn't cost you anything. Anybody can have it. So I'm going to give you all these links later on. But I think first of all, we should try it. Easy questions. But not hard, really. Don't let the one on the right confuse you. That's just as if it is a distractor. So, anyone like to tell me what year it is? Come on, you're quick. Thank you. Now, if you got that wrong, I would have given you 4 points. Because that's the pretty important thing. You've got to know the year. But if you got it right, you get 0 points. And this is one of these screenings where the lower the score, the better. Alright, so you want to be as near to 0 as possible. Right. Everybody volunteer for the next question, so it's much easier. Put your hands, dead easy. Who's going to answer the next question? Right, at the back. You're my only volunteer. Right, you have to shout. Ready? What month is it?
January.
Hey! She's good. She can read and she knows what month it is. So I think there's probably not too much of a problem there. It's probably about 21 or something. Okay, next one. Oh, it's not hard, put your hand up. You do it, Lawrence. Right, I'm going to give you a name and an address. Unfortunately, you've got the hard one. It's not that hard. John Brown, 42, West Street, Bedford. What did I just say? Remember that. So that's an important one. So this is the memory thing. This is the memory bit. So what you've done now is you actually give the client 2 jobs, 2 tasks. You've got to remember that bit because you're going to ask them again in a minute. And you also have to do the bits that come next. What is the time? And I actually found out when I was using this with someone, it's best not to have a clock in the room. In full view of the patient. But what was the time? Now I don't know what the time is. If I haven't got a watch and I really haven't got a clue. So that's why it's got to be within 60 minutes. So long as you're within 60 minutes, then it's acceptable. Get that wrong, you get 3 points. Count backwards from 20 to 1, that's not that difficult. I presume most people could do that one. You see a lot of the other ones go in multiples, so there's one which I think is starting at 100, count backwards, and 7. That's actually quite hard to do. So this is really designed for people with mild cognitive impairment, potential mild cognitive impairment. One area you get 2 points, more than one area you get 4 points. Say the month of the year is backwards, starting in December. A bit harder that one, I think. For me at least, of course, you should be able to get someone to do that. Don't worry, you will get all of this afterwards, you don't have to write it down. Oh, now. What was that name and address? Okay, that went pear-shaped. But you get the idea, okay? So then I did say, right, so what was the name and address? Now, you will notice that there's not many places, I guess, called West Street, Bedford, in Holland or Denmark, or anywhere like that. But maybe, I could be wrong. So I think the thing is, when Sweeto did his study, he substituted the same number, because there's 5 segments there. So John Brown is one, so that's the name. 42 is the next one, that's the number. West Street is the name of the street, and Bedford is the town. So I can't see any reason why, provided you've got the same format for your country, you couldn't have whatever. Because all you're doing is make sure that people have got 5 things to remember. And that's how it's scored. So if someone repeats this, and misses something, then every mistake they make, they get 2 points. So if they say John Smith, 42 West Street, Bedford, that would be 2 points. Each one of them, you get 2 points for. If you get it wrong, if you get it right, 0 points again. That looks complicated. Probably sounded complicated, but yes, it's not complicated. So the total score, this is the one we want to know. So 7 is the magic number. It crops up quite a lot in our industry. I don't know why. I think when I was looking at Quicksim, that was 7, and there was ANO was 7, so at least we got the same number. We only have to remember 7. So if your client, customer, patient scores being 0 to 7, then they're not showing any signs of mild cognitive. That's it. If they score between 8 and 28 points, the higher, the worse. And that's the point where you have to say, it's really important that we look at this for you because it's going to be valid for getting the best going forward with your ability. And I think the thing with that is just using the right words, and that's something we need to develop individually within our own practices. But this doesn't preclude you from fitting hearing aids. If someone is scoring 10, 15, 20 points, that doesn't stop you from fitting hearing aids. Fitting hearing aids is going to be very important, assuming your patient's got a hearing loss. But if they do, go ahead, but just bear in mind that if they've got a high score, then they are less likely to remember all the things that you tell them. And that's why it's very important to have a third party in on the whole process. So this is where you can get this from. The website is just very simple, 6cit.co.uk. When you go on the site, I think you register and you just say you're a healthcare professional and let you download it. They also have a scoring app which only runs on Windows. So I haven't got Windows supported, so I don't know if it works. I'm sure it will. But the scoring's not difficult, and you can get printed versions of the sheets as well. So, in summary, we know these links. We've always known, but now we know even more. Between aging, hearing, and cognitive decline. As hearing care professionals, our current focus is mainly on hearing, because that's what we know, and that's what we've been taught. Listening and understanding of reduced hearing, some cognitive impairment, and in difficult situations, can require greater effort. So remember that when you fit people with hearing aids, to send them abroad to try out speech and noise. We need clinical tools to enable us to quantify listening effort. This is something which we haven't quite got yet, so it's encouraging what Lisa was saying today. I hope that's going to be here soon. And have things like pupillometry, people are familiar with pupillometry. But you do have to have equipment and things. And I think once we can tap into our brains, then that will not be long coming. And we can use hearing aids for features that we've got now to reduce listening effort. So by using the right hearing aids and using the features of the hearing aids, we can make life easier. But in the meantime, we can use cognitive screening to begin to find their service advice.
Live long and prosper.
So, that concludes. Any questions? Am I confused completely, or everybody's like, yeah, that's great. Thank you very much.